Hey guys, this is GM Deron, and today I wanted to show you how I set up macros. Specifically, I'm going to use a Call of Cthulhu 7th edition game that I've been setting up. I've been using macros for a while, specifically token macros, and I've come to really love them. They save time. People don't have to open their character sheet to make relevant rolls and so forth, and I think that really helps to keep the immersion factor going and the story moving, so people aren't spending a lot of time doing gamey things and not role-playing things. So I wanted to start by just showing you what the end goal here is. I'm going to walk you through how I created these and some tips and tricks that I've learned over the last 2 years that I've been GMing on Roll20, and each time I run a new game, I learn some new efficiencies and tricks that I might use to make it easier and better the next time. So I thought I'd help you benefit from maybe all of my mistakes and the things that I've learned over time. So I'll just start by demonstrating kind of what the goal here is. With these token macros, the idea is that when someone selects their token on a sheet, or on a screen, they'll have all of these macros available to them up here. It can be different for each character, but they'll have a set of macros. Generally, these are going to correspond to attribute rolls from their character sheet. So for example, if I do a disguise check, that's a sheet right off of the character sheet. If I hold Alt key and double click on Benjamin, you'll see that here's the disguise, his disguise entry, and that corresponds to, that's exactly the same as if I had done this roll here, or I'm sorry, this one, the other one. So that gives me the same output, but instead of having to open the character sheet and do that, he just has to go and say, okay, there's my disguise, click it, done. If the value of that changes over time, for example, let's say he gets raises it to 25, it will still work. It's just basically pulling it right off the sheet. So that's 25 instead of 5 now. So that's one of the goals here, just to make it simple. So all these all these roles are set up here. I've added a few other things. For example, these are combat related things, and right now the game hasn't started, so he doesn't have any things like special weapons or that, but those can be easily added. In fact, if he decides, let's say he picks up a .38 revolver, he can go to his character sheet, and in the abilities here I've added all of these macros. So he can go down and find the .38 revolver and go, okay, well there's a .38 revolver. I'm going to turn on show as a token action, and now anytime he goes to his token, he's got that .38 revolver and he can resolve it. So that's a goal. So the player himself can turn that on or off. If he drops the .38 revolver, he can just go in, turn it off again. So just go down, scroll down, find that. You can see there's a lot of macros on here. You might imagine, holy crap, did you sit there and add those macros to every single character sheet and every NPC? The answer is no. I have, what I do is I start off with a template, and I spend the upfront time perfecting that template. Once that template is done, then I just duplicate off of that, and every character will work. So I started with one template, which I then duplicated several times for the 3 characters, and then for all of the very many NPCs that are going to be in this massive campaign. So I did it one time, and then I just keep copying that and using that sheet. And if, say, an NPC has certain weapons, or there's certain skills that I don't think are going to be very useful, and I want to kind of pare that down perhaps he is never ever going to operate heavy machinery. That's just not a thing that this character would ever do, particularly an NPC. I can just go in and turn that off. So, and I organize them alphabetically to make them really easy to find there. So he can customize his own token and just say, you know what, I'm never going to make that roll. And if I do, I'll just go in to my sheet, but now it's kind of decluttered my list of macros. So this is what I'm going to show you how I got from nothing to getting to here. Or at least I shouldn't say nothing, from a character sheet, a functioning character sheet, to having that. So let's look over at, this is a brand new campaign that or a brand new Roll20 game that I just created. So I haven't done any special stuff here. All I did was enable the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition character sheet, which all of this depends on the fact that you've got a character sheet that's going to generate the rolls the way you want them to be. If you don't have that, then this tutorial still might be of some help to you in just understanding how it all works, but it's not, you're not going to really be able to follow along with exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to create a new character. And so what I do is I always start with with a unique name that's just one word long, and you'll see why I want to do that later. I'm going to call it PC Deron. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's one word. I don't want spaces and all that sort of thing. So here's the sheet, and it's for that character. Now what I'm going to start doing is, you can see the character sheet has all of these dice roll buttons built in, and my goal now is I've got a Word document, a blank Word document, just sitting here waiting for me to start throwing these things in there. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go and I'm going to start, I'll just start with strength. I'm going to do a click. Now I generated this strength roll. And here's a trick. A lot of people don't realize, if you want to grab that, the code for that, click in the chat window and press the up arrow on your keyboard. And that goes back to the previous generated message or command in the chat window, and there it is right there. So I just do a Control A to grab all of that text, then a Control C to copy, and so now I have copied that code, and I'm going to just come over and paste it into Word. There's the code that generates for that specific character sheet. That's the code that generates that roll. So now I have that, and then I'm just going to come down and make a new paragraph. And I go back. I'm going to hit enter again to get out of there. It's going to roll it again, but I don't care. Now I'm going to do Constitution. Same thing. There's my Constitution. I do my up arrow, Control A to get everything, Control C to copy, come over, paste it. So this is going to be a little bit repetitive, and I'm not going to lie, it's work to do this, but the good news is you're going to do this one time and then you're done. Then it's just a beautiful copy paste of the, or sorry, it's just a copy of the characters, making duplicates, and they'll come with all of this stuff built in. So to me, it is absolutely well worth the time and effort to do this, even though it probably took me 2 hours maybe to do this whole setup. In the end, it was amazingly worth it. So here I'll just, go through size. I do the same thing, grab that, come along. Then I'd have to go through and do every single skill. So I do anthropology, come in, paste that, etc. Until I am. So when I'm done, I'll get a Word document that looks like this. Actually, not quite like this. But I'll have all of the macros that are possible. And I even added, which is kind of, I may do as a bonus video, showing you how I set up all of the weapons. I did every single weapon in the Call of Cthulhu rulebook, so that I'd have a macro for those as well. But for this video, I'm just going to assume we're doing the stuff off the sheet, just the attribute rolls. So you end up with a you end up with a Word document that's full of these entries. And the trick is, for some of you who might have tried to do macros before, you know that each macro, when I generate this, if you look at the code, you'll see that particular generated action is for that character only. Now, if I try to go and take that macro and paste it into another character's sheet, it won't actually do that character. It'll do PC Deron. So that's, unfortunately, that's a limitation. So the way you get around that is that what I do is I'll do a replace. I do find what? I'm looking for PC Deron. That's why I made it one word, all lowercase, just no space, just to keep it simple, and something absolutely unique, something I knew that would never be part of the code of any of these things. You're never going to see PC Deron as part of a programming language. So I do PC Deron, and I'm going to replace it with selected. Selected is the magic key right here. So I would replace that, and of course there would be a gajillion replacements for a document that large, like the other one. And so now if you look, you'll see that it's all selected now. Why is that? Now this is kind of generic. What that means is it refers to the selected token, the character sheet that's associated with the selected token. That's where we want to generate this off of. That's why. So when you look at the final one, I had already run that replace. And so you can see I've got selected everywhere in here. This is just massive selected. But I just had to replace one time, did them all. So now that I've got that, what I start doing is I go in, and in this sheet, in my attributes and ability, so I start adding these roles in. So I look, if you've got dual monitors, it's helpful to have them, have this on one monitor, the character sheet on another. But if you don't, it's just a little more work, but it's the same idea. So I'm going to do this. This will be my strength role. So I would set an ability here. I'm going to call it STR for strength, and I'm going to paste that code in there. So that's how you click add to make a new macro. Click this little pencil icon to open up so you can get at the code for the macro. grab the code, come back in, paste it, give it a name. This is for con, and you're good. The only other thing you have to do is, if you want it to display by default, you need to turn this on. Check show as token action. So now I've got strength and constitution. So let's say I want to come here and I'm just going to grab somebody, and I'm going to assign him to PC Deron. So now that he's assigned to that character sheet, you'll see he's got constitution and strength, and it rolls straight off that sheet. So that's the idea. It's a little tedious, as you can imagine, to sit there and create all of those. But as I said, when you're done, you're going to have this sheet, and then when I'm all done, I typically go back and I just call it like template, so that I know what that this is my starting template. And I'm going to tell you this as a pro tip: make duplicates of that before you do anything. Make a few duplicates, and then archive those duplicates. So I've got these here. I'm going to, this is a copy of the template, I'm going to archive it, and now I've got a backup in case because I've found myself, I've accidentally gone in and started making changes directly to my template and realized, oh crap, I just started doing the template. Well, if you make a couple archived backups, you've always got stuff to fall back on that you can restore it, and now you've got a pristine template again, and I'd rename it template and so on. So back them up. That's a strong urge there to do that you should do that. Now, if we jump over into the finished game that I showed you earlier, you may notice that I have organized the macros into kind of groups by type. So I have my combat ones up here at the beginning, combat related things, and I've done that by adding a dash in front as the part of the macro name. So if you look at the macro name, let's see, for these combat ones down here, they all start with a dash. So that's the way the macros are ordered. If you choose to order them alphabetically, which comes over here, let's see, alphabetically sort token actions. If you enable that, then they will sort themselves kind of naturally alphabetically. I have the attribute ones here with a right-facing caret. So you've got, you know, your standard ones up there, and then for the skills, I don't use anything, so then they'll sort themselves alphabetically. These come before A, so those are all going to kind of appear ahead, and then we've got all the names. And then I use Z for a Z dash for the for anything that's sort of extra. If you have like a little status thing, or in this case, I've added some lighting stuff since I use dynamic lighting in some places. This way, people can turn on flashlights and torches and turn them off at will right from their token. So you can follow, you know, whatever convention you want, but I find it very helpful to have things sort that way. So once you've done that, as I said, and you have your template, what I do, and when it's all done and I'm happy with it, and this is kind of the tricky part, is I usually let it sit. If I've got the luxury of not having to run the game immediately, I let my character sheet sit before I start creating any NPCs. Because it almost inevitably occurs to me that there's something else I'd like to add as a macro, and it's better to do that before you start duplicating this and using it in many places than to have to go and maybe go, oh, I really want to add that to the 20 different ones. Then you got to copy and paste stuff, and it's kind of a pain. But once you're happy with it, you'd go in, and I just create a bunch of duplicates, and then open this up, and now I've just got my character. Maybe this is Bob Jr. So now I've got a character sheet for Bob, and I can create a token for him and assign, for example, and I can just assign that to Bob Jr. now, and here I go. And now he'll have the same stuff, the same macros as any of the other characters, but it will use the values on his personal sheet, on Bob Jr.'s sheet. So that can be all changed, and if he's got an amazing dodge, I can give him an 80 dodge, which he very well might need in Call of Cthulhu. And then if that is, well, I didn't add it, so he's not going to have that as a macro, but if he did, it would appear as a macro on his thing there, and then he'd roll using an 80. So that's sort of the basics of how I set these up. It's really not difficult, it's just a little tedious. It does take a while. As I said, I think it took me about 2 hours to generate all of those roles, put them in a Word document, substitute selected for them. Of course, that only took about 30 seconds. And then copy them back into the sheet as attributes so that they would appear as macros on the token. So that's about it for this pretty brief video. If anyone would like, I could go ahead and show you how I set up all the weapon macros, for example, the lighting macro, any of that other stuff. I just consider that sort of like an advanced topic. This should really get you going. If you've been afraid to try to do macros, this should at least get you a big leg up in making use of them. I think you will love them as much as I do if you do go down that route. So that's all. I hope this was a helpful video.